Those old fools will pay for everything. The words from Emily's email burned into my retinas as I stared at my computer screen. My sister, my own flesh and blood, referring to our parents as suckers and old fools while detailing her plans to exploit them financially with more babies, an extravagant wedding, and endless support. My finger hovered over the forward button. One click, and our parents would see the real Emily, not the sweet daughter they thought they were helping, but a calculating manipulator planning to drain them dry. My stomach twisted with the moral dilemma. Would sending this make me a betrayer or a protector? I took a deep breath and pressed forward. Sometimes the raw truth is more powerful than any commentary. That was 3 months ago. Sometimes doing the right thing feels terrible at first, but eventually leads to healing. I couldn't have imagined then how much would change for all of us. Flashback. The beginning of independence. I was 22 when I graduated with my business administration degree. Throughout college, I'd lived in my grandmother's old apartment, technically my father's after she passed away 3 years earlier. I only covered utilities by working part-time at Luigi's, an Italian restaurant 2 blocks away. The graduation dinner at my parents' house felt perfect initially. Mom outdid herself with cooking, as usual. My younger sister Emily, 17 then, kept joking about missing my homework help. Several relatives came too, all congratulating me, but after they left, everything changed. Mom cleared her throat in that way she always did before saying something uncomfortable. My stomach instantly nodded. I'd known that sound since childhood. Tamara, honey, she started, her voice unusually formal. Now that you've graduated, we need to discuss the apartment situation. I remember setting down my coffee cup slowly, trying to keep my hands steady. What about it? Well, if you want to continue living there, you'll need to start paying rent. The words hit me like a bucket of cold water on my graduation day of all days. Dad sat silently, suddenly very interested in his coffee cup, while Emily pretended to be absorbed in her phone, though I caught her watching from the corner of her eye. I see, I managed to say, my voice smaller than intended. Mom explained the terms matter-of-factly. The rent would be below market rate. A family discount, she called it with a tight smile, but still substantial. Flashback. The year of growing up. That night, lying in bed, I searched for job openings. I knew I needed something stable. The restaurant couldn't offer full-time hours. As I scrolled through listings, I tried focusing on practical matters rather than the hurt feelings beneath the surface. It wasn't the rent that bothered me most. I understood that was part of growing up. It was the timing, the way it was presented so coldly on what should have been a day of celebration. Perhaps I'd been naive to think my parents would give me a grace period to find my footing in the working world before adding financial pressure. Growing up, I'd watch my parents struggle with money. Dad worked long hours at the construction company, often coming home with his shoulders slumped from exhaustion. Mom took on substitute teaching whenever she could, pinching pennies and clipping coupons religiously. They'd always emphasized independence and hard work. For me, at least. Emily somehow escaped these expectations. The next year passed in a blur of work, rent payments, and adjusting to post-college life. I landed a decent job at a marketing firm near the apartment. Every month, I dutifully transferred rent money to Mom's account, usually adding extra for utilities, though she never asked. Maybe part of me was still trying to earn their approval, though I wouldn't admit that to myself at the time. Emily would stop by occasionally, usually when she needed something, homework help, clothes, advice about boys. She'd always been the baby of the family, used to getting her way. Mom and Dad spoiled her, though I tried not to be bitter about it. They'd never made her get a part-time job like I had, never pushed her to be independent. She's more sensitive than you, Mom once explained when I questioned the double standard. You've always been so capable, Tamara. Emily needs more guidance. What I heard was, you don't need us as much as she does. Perhaps that's why I worked so hard to be self-sufficient. I learned early that my needs came second. The betrayal, family meeting, then came the phone call that changed everything. Tamara, you need to come over right away, Mom said, her voice tight with tension. It's important. I assumed it would be about Emily's college plans. How wrong I was. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the atmosphere was strange. Mom and Dad sat rigidly on the couch, while Emily perched on the armchair, looking smug. Sit down, Tamara, Dad said, his voice gravelly. He looked older somehow, tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. Emily is pregnant, Mom announced without preamble. I sat there stunned. My 18-year-old sister was pregnant by her part-time mall employee boyfriend, Jason. A boy who'd once told me his life plan was to get rich without working too hard. A boy who let Emily pay whenever they went out, claiming he'd forgotten his wallet. There's something else we need to discuss, Mom continued, straightening her back. Emily and Jason will need a place to live. They'll be moving into the apartment. The room started spinning slightly. Excuse me? You'll need to move out, Mom stated matter-of-factly. Emily and Jason need somewhere to start their family. I looked at Emily, examining her freshly painted nails with a satisfied smirk. She didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable about kicking her own sister out of her home. I'll need time to find a new place, I managed to say. A week should be enough, Mom replied. Oh, and Tamara, Mom added, as if she'd almost forgotten something trivial. You'll still need to continue paying the rent. I actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. When I saw their serious faces, my laugh died in my throat. You can't be serious. Your sister and Jason are young, Mom explained patiently. They don't have jobs yet, and with the baby coming. So let me get this straight, I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You want me to move out and continue paying rent for an apartment I won't be living in for them? They need our help, Tamara, Dad said sternly. It's your responsibility as the older sister. Family helps family. My responsibility? If they're mature enough to have a baby, they're mature enough to get jobs and support themselves. How can you be so selfish? Emily suddenly piped up, her eyes filling with dramatic tears, the same tears she'd used to manipulate our parents since childhood. I'm going to be a mother. Don't you care about your niece or nephew? You're being very ungrateful, Mom said coldly. After everything we've done for you. I walked out with their shouts of ungrateful and selfish following me to my car. That night, I started packing, tears streaming down my face as I sorted through 4 years of memories. The move, breaking free. Fortunately, I had savings. I found a small studio apartment across town and signed the lease the next day. As I packed, I categorized everything by who had paid for them. The furniture my parents provided stayed behind, but everything I'd purchased myself went into boxes marked with my name. My coffee maker, a splurge after my first bonus. My laptop, bought with tips from Luigi's. My bed, purchased piece by piece over my first 6 months of full-time work. All the things I'd worked hard to buy went straight to my new place. When I was done, I slipped the apartment key under my parents' door. No note. What was there to say? A week later, Mom called, her voice shrill with rage. What have you done to the apartment? It's empty. Everything that was there when I moved in is still there, I replied calmly. I only took what was mine. Things I bought with money I earned working while going to college. Maybe Emily and Jason can try doing the same. The string of expletives that followed would have made a sailor blush. I'd never heard my mother use such language before. That night, sitting on my mattress in my new apartment, I finally cried. I cried for the family I thought I had, for the sister who'd turned into a stranger, for the parents who'd chosen to enable her instead of supporting me. But mostly, I cried for myself, for the naive girl who thought that working hard and doing the right thing would be enough. Looking around at my tiny kitchen with the second-hand microwave, the bathroom with the dripping faucet, the thin walls that let me hear my neighbors' arguments, I wondered if this was what growing up really meant. Realizing that life isn't fair, that love is sometimes conditional, that family can hurt you deeper than anyone else. The rise? Finding my strength, I threw myself into work with surprising intensity. My boss Sarah noticed my dedication and gave me more responsibilities. Work became my sanctuary, the one place where effort and merit actually meant something. The promotion came with a nice raise. I opened a savings account specifically for a down payment on my own place someday. No more renting from family or anyone else. Through social media, I glimpsed my family's life. Emily had given birth to a boy. My nephew, though I'd never met him. Emily and Jason were still just engaged. playing house in my old apartment while my parents footed all their bills. Dad had come from a wealthy family that lost everything when he was a teenager. Perhaps that explained his desperation to give Emily everything he'd once had and then lost. Mom had been the responsible oldest daughter in her family too. Maybe she saw herself in me and assumed I could handle whatever was thrown my way, just as she had. Understanding doesn't erase hurt, but it helped me see them as flawed humans rather than villains in my story. The email, truth revealed, then came Emily's email. Hey sis, hope you're doing well. I heard you got a promotion. Congratulations. I'd love for you to come visit and meet your nephew. Plus, I've heard you're doing really well financially now. The next email contained a wish list of baby items. Designer clothes costing more than my rent, a stroller more expensive than my laptop, premium toys probably costing more than Jason's monthly earnings, if he even had a job. Are you working yet? I wrote back, ignoring her list. Her response. Oh, mom and dad are taking care of everything. They pay all the bills and give us spending money. Jason and I don't need to work right now. We're focusing on being parents. Then came the line that brought us back to where this story began. Actually, we're thinking of having more kids soon. Mom and dad are such suckers. I mean, they're so supportive. They'll have to keep helping us if we have more babies. And we want a big wedding too, nothing cheap. Those old fools will pay for everything. I forwarded the email to mom without comment. The reckoning, truth and consequences. A week later, Aunt Sarah called. You won't believe what happened, she said, voice thick with family gossip. Your parents kicked Emily out of the apartment. There had been a huge fight. Mom had found out about Emily's plans to exploit them. Dad had finally put his foot down and told them they had 3 days to leave. According to Aunt Sarah, Mom had been eerily calm, simply saying, We've been played for fools long enough. Emily called me in tears, asking to stay with me. No, I said firmly, surprised by how easy it was to say that single word. You're just like Mom and Dad. She screamed. You're all so selfish. We're family. Family doesn't exploit family, I replied quietly and hung up. Later, I heard that Emily, Jason, and the baby had moved in with his parents. His mother was apparently a strict, no-nonsense woman who believed in responsibility. Emily was miserable, forced to follow schedule, help with housework, and actually parent her child. Jason's mother insisted he keep his warehouse job and that they contribute to household expenses. Epilogue. Silver frames and second chances. On my birthday, a package arrived from my parents. A silver photo frame I'd once admired years ago but couldn't afford. The card read, We're sorry. We miss you. When you're ready, we'd like to talk. No demands, no guilt trips, just 9 simple words. I set the frame on my coffee table, both a reminder of what I'd lost and what might still be salvaged. I haven't called them yet. The hurt is still there, a dull ache that flares up when I think about everything that happened. Today, I'm doing well. My career is thriving with another promotion. I have friends who understand boundaries. I'm learning to set healthy limits in all relationships. Sometimes I miss the family I thought I had, but I'm starting to accept it was never what I imagined. The silver frame sits on my coffee table, representing both loss and possibility. When I'm ready, when the hurt has faded enough for forgiveness to take root, perhaps we can build something new, not based on obligation or exploitation, but on mutual respect. For now, I'm focusing on my own life. My apartment is becoming a home with things I've chosen and earned. I'm planning my first real vacation since college and thinking about getting a dog. Small steps toward building the life I want, not the one others tried to force me into. Yesterday, I picked up the phone and started dialing my parents' number. I didn't complete the call, not yet, but for the first time, I felt like I might be ready soon. Not to forget, but perhaps to forgive. Not to return to how things were, but to explore what they might become. Family is complicated. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries. Sometimes healing begins with telling the truth, even when it hurts. And sometimes a silver frame can be the first step toward a second chance. I stared at the single place card with my name on it, positioned at the furthest corner of Lou Blank's grand ballroom. One chair, One place setting, at a table meant for six. The rest of the space, empty. Deliberately so. The contrast was almost artistic. The glittering chandeliers above the other tables gradually dimming as the light reached my corner, as if the darkness itself was acknowledging my status as family embarrassment. I stood frozen, the navy blue dress I had splurged on suddenly feeling too tight, too desperate. What did you expect? Vanessa's voice came from behind me, dripping with that familiar mixture of disdain and pity. You're a total loser, Margaret. All my friends think you're weird, and Tyler's family doesn't need to be subjected to your peculiarities. In that moment, I felt something break inside me, not my heart, which had been hardened by years of similar treatment, but the last remaining thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, my family might someday see me. I looked toward the center of the room where my parents stood, proudly introducing Tyler's family to their friends. They hadn't even noticed my arrival, despite the hours I'd spent preparing, despite the salon appointment, despite the dress that cost more than I'd spent on clothes in the past year. It was in that moment I realized I would never be enough for them. Not as I was. And I would never again try to be someone I wasn't. Flashback, growing apart. I've always known I was different from my sister Vanessa. While she was the life of every party, I preferred the quiet company of my computer. My name is Margaret, and I've never quite fit into my family's idea of what a normal daughter should be. Margaret, you're such a freak, Vanessa would say, tossing her perfectly styled hair. All my friends think you're absolutely crazy sitting in your room programming all day. I remember the first time she said that. I was 12, and I had just built my first simple game. I wanted to show it to her, thought maybe she'd be impressed. Instead, she laughed and called her friends on the landline so they could laugh too. That night, I cried into my pillow, wondering why I couldn't just like the things other girls liked. Why I couldn't be like Vanessa, who seemed to move through the world so effortlessly, collecting friends and compliments like they were free samples at the mall. Margaret, honey, my mother Caroline would say, her voice always tinged with that special blend of concern and disappointment she reserved just for me. Wouldn't you like to go out with some friends instead of staring at that screen all day? She never understood that the rhythmic clicking of my keyboard was more comforting than any conversation with Vanessa's judgmental friends could ever be. My mother had been homecoming queen in her day, had married the football captain. Her world made sense to her. Women were social, charming, and placed family above all else. My fascination with code, with building things no one could see, was as foreign to her as speaking Martian. My father Edward was no better, though his disappointment was quieter. He'd glance at my report cards, nod at the straight A's, and then immediately turn to ask Vanessa about her latest social conquest or the boy she was dating. As if academic achievement was expected, but social achievement was celebrated. Advancement. Finding my path. When I got accepted to college with a full scholarship in computer science, even Vanessa couldn't make a snide remark about that. Well, actually, she did. At least you won't have to worry about boys distracting you there. But for once, her words didn't sting. Because I had found my people, other students who understood the satisfaction of solving a complex programming problem, professors who valued my analytical mind. For the first time, I didn't feel like an alien species. After graduating, I landed a job at a top mobile app development company. The salary was incredible, much more than I let on to my family. How's that computer job? My mother would ask during our increasingly rare phone calls, her tone suggesting I was answering customer service questions rather than architecting complex systems. It's fine, I'd reply, not mentioning the promotion I'd received after just 6 months, or the bonus that had allowed me to start seriously saving for my dream home. I knew exactly what would happen if they found out. Vanessa would be at my door with her hand out, and my parents would guilt-trip me if I refused to help. So I kept quiet, lived in a modest rented apartment, and saved every penny I could. My dream was simple: a country house where I could work remotely, away from the chaos of the city and nosy neighbors. A place where I could finally find peace. Conflict the engagement, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of a phone call from Vanessa. Margaret, she said, her voice dripping with fake enthusiasm, I'm getting engaged. And yes, before you ask, you're invited too. I knew Tyler, her fiance, and he was actually a decent guy. Quiet, thoughtful, with a kind smile that seemed at odds with Vanessa's sharp edges. How he ended up with Vanessa was beyond me, but I genuinely wished them well. The engagement party is at Lou Blanc next month, she continued, her voice taking on that familiar condescending tone. And please, for the love of God, dress like a normal person. No t-shirts, no jeans, and please do something with your hair. You do know what makeup is, right? I rolled my eyes, grateful she couldn't see me through the phone. Yes, Vanessa, I know what makeup is. I'll dress appropriately. After hanging up, I sat in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the dark computer screen. Why did I still care? Why did her words still have the power to make me feel like that awkward 12-year-old, desperate for approval? The weekend after Vanessa's call, I visited my parents' house. Big mistake. The moment I walked in, I was hit with a wave of wedding fever. Mom was surrounded by bridal magazines, and Dad was looking overwhelmed by the stack of catering pamphlets in front of him. Oh, Margaret, Mom said, barely looking up from her magazine. Did Vanessa tell you about the engagement? Yeah, she did. I sat down at the kitchen table, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. So, how much is all this going to cost? Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, we're thinking about taking out a loan. I nearly choked on my apple. A loan? For a wedding? Why not use that money for something practical, like a down payment on their first house? Mom looked at me like I just suggested they should host the wedding in a dumpster. Margaret, honey, you just don't understand these things. You spend all your time with computers. You don't even have a boyfriend. Every girl dreams of her perfect wedding day. I bit back the words that threatened to spill out about how Mom's fixation on perfect weddings stemmed from her own mother's disappointment in her elopement, about how Dad's willingness to go into debt was rooted in his desperate need to be seen as successful by his country club friends. I just think going into debt for one day is excessive, I said instead. Well, nobody asked for your opinion. Vanessa's voice came from behind me. I hadn't even heard her come in. Some of us actually care about making memories and having nice things. I turned to face her. And some of us care about financial responsibility. God, you're such a bore. Vanessa rolled her eyes. This is why you're still single. You know, everything has to be practical with you. Where's the romance? The spontaneity? Probably in the same place as your common sense, I muttered under my breath. Mom shot me a warning look. Margaret, if you're just going to be negative, maybe you should go home. I stood up, suddenly tired of all of it. Maybe I should. Good luck with the loan applications. As I walked to my car, I could hear them resume their excited wedding planning through the open window. I wondered if they'd even notice if I didn't show up to the engagement party. But I knew I had to go, if only to prove that I could be normal when I wanted to be. Climax. The corner table. The month flew by faster than I expected. On the day of Vanessa's engagement party, I actually made an effort. I bought a navy blue dress that cost more than I'd normally spend on clothes for an entire season. I even went to a salon and let them work their magic on my usually messy hair. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The taxi dropped me off at Lou Blanc, one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Vanessa had rented out the entire place for her engagement party, something that made my practical mind cringe at the unnecessary expense. The venue was decorated with what must have been thousands of dollars worth of flowers, and champagne was flowing freely. As I walked in, I noticed how the guests were already divided into their little cliques. Vanessa's friends from college were huddled near the bar, giggling and taking selfies. The groom's family occupied several tables near the front, all looking properly impressed by the extravagant display. My parents were working the room, Mom in her element as she introduced people to each other. I looked around for my place card, assuming I'd be seated at the family table near Vanessa. After all, I was the bride's only sister. I checked each table near the front, then the middle section, finding nothing with my name. That's when I approached my parents. Mom, where am I supposed to sit? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Mom looked me up and down, her expression a mix of surprise and something else. Was that disappointment? Even in my expensive dress and professionally done hair, I apparently still didn't meet her standards. Oh, she said, glancing around nervously. Your table is over there. She pointed to the furthest corner of the room, partially hidden in shadows where the expense of lighting didn't quite reach. I walked over to the indicated table, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Sure enough, there was a single place card with my name on it. One chair, one place setting, at a table meant for six. I stood there staring at it, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. In that moment, a flood of memories washed over me. My 8th birthday party when Vanessa convinced all our cousins to play in the backyard instead of joining my science-themed activities. My high school graduation when my parents spent more time congratulating Vanessa on her cheerleading award than acknowledging my valedictorian speech. The countless family dinners where my achievements were footnotes to Vanessa's social triumphs. What the hell, Vanessa? I muttered, turning on my heel to find my sister. I found her surrounded by her bridesmaids, all of them cooing over her engagement ring. Vanessa, can we talk privately? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes, but followed me to a quiet corner. What is it? And please, don't make a scene. A scene? You put me at a table by myself in the corner, like some kind of pariah, and you're worried about me making a scene? Oh, get over yourself, Vanessa snapped. What did you expect? You're a total loser, Margaret. All my friends think you're weird, and Tyler's family doesn't need to be subjected to your peculiarities. I felt like I'd been slapped. Your friends think I'm weird because I have a successful career instead of living off our parents? Because I don't post every detail of my life on social media? No, because you're a freak who cares more about computers than people. Vanessa's voice was rising, attracting attention from nearby guests. Before I could respond, Mom appeared at Vanessa's side. What's going on here? Mom, Vanessa just called me a loser and a freak, I said, hating how my voice cracked. Mom's face hardened. Margaret, stop making a scene. This is your sister's special day. Just go sit at your table and try not to draw attention to yourself. I looked between them, these two women who were supposed to be my family, and felt something inside me break. Without another word, I turned and walked to my isolated table in the corner. I sat at that lonely table for exactly 30 minutes. I watched as Vanessa and Tyler made their official engagement announcement. I watched as my parents beamed with pride. I watched as everyone else in the room celebrated, laughed, and enjoyed themselves, while I sat alone in the shadows. Finally, I'd had enough. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and quietly made my way to the exit. Nobody noticed me leaving, or if they did, they didn't care enough to stop me. Transformation. Building my sanctuary. The taxi ride home was a blur. I kicked off my expensive heels the moment I got through my apartment door and changed into my comfortable programming clothes. Yes, the t-shirt and jeans Vanessa so despised. Then, I did what I always did when I needed to process emotions. I started coding. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and earning substantial bonuses. My bank account grew, while my contact with my family shrank to nothing. No calls, no texts, no visits. It was like I'd been erased from their lives, and honestly, it felt like a relief. That's when I decided to stop waiting and start living. I had more than enough saved for a down payment on a house, and my salary could easily cover a mortgage. I contacted a realtor named Jennifer and told her exactly what I was looking for. Single-family home, preferably somewhat isolated, good internet connection for remote work, and absolutely no nosy neighbors. Jennifer laughed. I think I know just the place. She was right. The house was perfect, a modern country home with a wraparound porch, surrounded by enough land to ensure privacy. The previous owners had already set up high-speed internet, and the home office had massive windows overlooking a small pond. I'll take it, I said the moment we finished the tour. The mortgage process was smooth, and within weeks, I was a homeowner. I told exactly 2 people about my purchase. My best friend from college and my team lead at work. My family didn't need to know. They'd lost that privilege when they'd relegated me to the shadows at Vanessa's engagement party. I moved in gradually, setting up my home office first, then furnishing the rest of the house room by room. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. No drama, no judgment, just me and my space. But peace, as I was learning, was a luxury my family wouldn't let me enjoy for long. Confrontation. The family tribunal. 2 weeks after I'd settled into my new home, my phone lit up with my mother's number. "Margaret, we need to talk," she said, her voice stern. "Come to the house tomorrow afternoon. Your sister will be there too." I should have known something was wrong from her tone. I should have asked why they suddenly wanted to see me after weeks of silence, but I didn't. Instead, I agreed to come, walking straight into the ambush they had planned. I pulled into my parents' driveway, noticing Vanessa's flashy red convertible already parked there. The car had been a gift from our parents for her college graduation, just one of the many ways they'd always shown their favoritism. I parked my sensible hybrid behind it and took a deep breath before heading inside. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. My parents and Vanessa were sitting in the living room looking like a panel of judges ready to pass sentence. Their faces were stern, accusing, and Vanessa had that smug look she always wore when she thought she had something over me. "Sit down, Margaret," Dad said, pointing to the lone chair facing them all. I sat, my programmer's brain already running through possible scenarios, debugging what could have triggered this family tribunal. "What's this about?" Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Why don't you tell us about your new house, Miss Successful Programmer?" My blood ran cold. "How did they?" Then it hit me. "Jennifer," I said flatly. "Your friend Jennifer is my realtor." "Bingo." Vanessa clapped sarcastically. Imagine my surprise when she mentioned helping my sister buy a beautiful country house. My sister who lives in a modest apartment and never seems to have any extra money to help her family. Mom jumped in before I could respond. "We know everything, Margaret. We know how much you make. We know about your bonuses. You've been lying to us all this time." "Lying?" I stood up, anger replacing my initial shock. "I haven't lied about anything. I just chose not to share my financial information with you." "There's a difference." "Same thing," Vanessa snapped. "You've been holding out on us while living like a hermit to fool everyone into thinking you were struggling." I laughed bitterly. "When exactly should I have shared this information? At my corner table during your engagement party? You were ashamed of me when you thought I was a poor loser, and now you're angry because I'm actually successful?" Dad raised his hand to quiet us both. "Margaret, the point is, you've never shown any interest in helping your family. We're taking out loans for your sister's wedding while you're buying country houses. Interest in helping?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "When have any of you shown interest in my life? You've never once visited my apartment. You've never asked about my work except to dismiss it as sitting at a computer all day. The only time you pay attention to me is when you need something or want to criticize me." They started talking all at once, their voices overlapping. "We could have used help with Vanessa's college tuition. I needed a new car last year. The wedding venue deposit alone is crushing us." I held up my hand. "I'm done making excuses for my success. I'm done feeling guilty for managing my money well. I'm leaving." "Wait." Vanessa's voice cut through the chaos. "We didn't actually call you here to fight about your secret wealth." I turned back, dreading what was coming next. "Since you can afford country houses," Vanessa said, her voice sickly sweet, "you can pay for my wedding." I felt a laugh bubble up from somewhere deep inside me. Not a happy laugh, but the kind that comes when something is so absurd you can't help but laugh or cry. "Don't you dare laugh at us." Vanessa stood up, her face contorting with rage. "You owe us." "I don't owe you anything," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Especially not after how you've treated me." "How we've treated you?" Vanessa screeched. "You're the one who's been living a lie, hiding your success from your family." I turned to face her fully. "You're right, Vanessa. I am successful. I'm a loser who can afford to buy her own house. And you know what? Losers don't pay for weddings for their successful sisters." The look of shock on her face was almost worth all the drama. Almost. "Margaret." Mom gasped. "How dare you throw your sister's words back at her?" "Why not? She meant them when she said them. She meant them when she stuck me in the corner at her engagement party. She meant them every time she called me a freak or weird or crazy. Why shouldn't I mean them now?" I walked to the door, ignoring their protests and accusations. Just before leaving, I turned back one last time. You know what's funny? If you had ever shown genuine interest in my life, if you had ever treated me like a real member of this family instead of an embarrassment to be hidden away, I might have actually wanted to help. But you made your choices, and I've made mine. Resolution, digital truth, and real family. I drove home to my beautiful new house, feeling lighter than I had in years. But the universe wasn't done testing me yet. The very next day, while I was setting up my new home office, I heard aggressive knocking at my front door. Through the security camera I'd installed, I saw Vanessa standing there, clutching what looked like papers. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "What do you want here?" She thrust a stack of papers at me. "This is the list of wedding expenses. The venue deposit is due next week." I looked at the list without taking it. The numbers were astronomical, enough to put a down payment on another house. "And you're showing me this because?" "Because you're paying for it," she said as if explaining something to a child. "All of it. It's what mom and dad expect, and it's what I deserve. What you deserve." I couldn't help but laugh again. "Vanessa, you don't deserve anything from me. Not after how you've treated me our entire lives." She stormed off my porch, screaming that I wasn't invited to her wedding. I called after her. "Don't worry, I wouldn't come anyway. I already know which table you'd put me at." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next few days brought a barrage of calls and messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly concerned about family unity and sisterly duty. Apparently, mom had been busy spreading the word about my selfishness and hidden wealth. After 3 days of constant harassment from relatives, I'd had enough. Every notification on my phone brought another guilt-tripping message or angry voicemail. Aunt Linda thought I was destroying the family. Cousin Mike, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, suddenly had strong opinions about my obligations. Even my mother's bridge club friends were messaging me on Facebook. I sat in my home office staring at my multiple monitors, watching the messages pile up. The programmer in me knew that every problem had a solution. You just had to find the right algorithm. In this case, the solution was simple: debug the family narrative. I opened my social media accounts and started typing. "Since there seems to be a lot of confusion about recent family events, let me clear things up." At my sister's engagement party, I was seated alone at a table in the darkest corner of the restaurant, separated from all other guests. When I asked why, my sister called me a poor loser and said she was ashamed of me. My own mother told me to sit there quietly and not make a scene. Now, weeks later, they've discovered I'm successful in my career. Suddenly, the sister who was ashamed to see me with her guests demands that I pay for her entire wedding. The parents who never once visited my apartment now feel entitled to know everything about my finances. To all the relatives messaging me about family duty, where was this concern for family unity when I was being hidden away at family functions? Where were these messages of support when I was being called a freak for pursuing my career? I bought my house with money I earned through hard work. I'm not obligated to fund anyone else's life choices. End of story. I hit post and sat back, waiting for the fallout. It came faster than I expected, but not in the way I anticipated. The relatives went quiet. The angry messages stopped. Instead, I started getting private messages from cousins sharing their own stories about Vanessa's behavior over the years. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she treated poorly. My phone rang. It was my mother. I declined the call. It rang again. "Vanessa." Declined. My dad tried next. Declined. They kept trying, switching between their phones, even trying to call from unknown numbers. I blocked them all. Then came the pounding on my door. I checked my security camera. My parents and Vanessa were standing on my porch. Vanessa was screaming something about how I'd ruined her reputation. Mom was crying. Dad looked uncomfortable. I turned on the porch speaker, another tech edition I'd installed. "Go home. I have nothing to say to any of you. Margaret, please." Mom's voice crackled through my security system. "We can talk about this." "You want to talk?" I responded through the speaker. After years of dismissing me? After trying to shame me into paying for Vanessa's wedding? No thanks. You're destroying this family. Vanessa screamed at my security camera. I couldn't help but laugh. No, Vanessa. You and mom and dad did that years ago. I'm just finally standing up for myself. They stayed on my porch for another hour, alternating between threats and pleas. I kept working, letting my noise-canceling headphones block out their voices. Finally, they left, but not before Vanessa screamed that I was definitely not invited to her wedding, like that was supposed to be a punishment. Epilogue. Found family, life has a way of moving forward whether you're ready or not. I heard through my aunt that my parents ended up taking out a massive loan for Vanessa's wedding. Mom had to give up her weekly spa treatments, and dad had to postpone his retirement. But they still tell everyone who'll listen about their ungrateful eldest daughter who refused to help. Vanessa got her dream wedding, or at least the version of it she could afford with my parents' loan. I saw the photos on social media. It looked exactly like every other wedding Vanessa's friends had. Expensive, elaborate, and completely devoid of personality. I noticed they seated another cousin at that corner table where I had sat at the engagement party. Apparently, she'd committed the sin of getting divorced the year before, making her another family embarrassment. My aunt keeps me updated on family news, though I never ask for it. She told me that my parents had to downsize their lifestyle significantly to manage the wedding loan payments. Vanessa complains constantly about how her modest wedding was all my fault. She conveniently forgets to mention the corner table incident when she tells people her version of events. As for me, I'm thriving. My house has become my sanctuary. I've set up the perfect home office, complete with all the latest tech. My team at work loves that I can host our virtual meetings without background distractions. I've even started mentoring young programmers in my spare time, especially girls who, like me, prefer computers to conformity. Last week, I got another wedding invitation. This time it was from one of the young women I mentor. She's marrying her girlfriend, and her conservative family refused to attend. Will you sit at the family table? She asked me, her voice trembling slightly over the phone. I felt my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Of course I will. You're more family to me than they've ever been, she continued, and I realized I wasn't the only one who'd had to redefine what family meant. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you end up with. Sometimes the black sheep of the family isn't the one with the problem. And sometimes sitting alone at a table in the corner is the first step toward finding your own place in the world. As for my parents and Vanessa, I'm sure they'll keep telling anyone who'll listen about their terrible daughter/sister who refused to pay for a wedding. But I've learned that their opinion of me doesn't define me. My worth isn't measured by their acceptance or rejection. I am Margaret, the IT consultant who bought her own house, built her own life, and finally learned to stop apologizing for not fitting into someone else's idea of who I should be. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Delete, I whisper, my finger hovering over the screen. Mom's message glares back at me. We don't need this. We need you to help your family. The clock reads 3:17 a.m. I've spent the entire night researching gambling addiction resources instead of sleeping, and this is the thanks I get. My apartment feels too quiet, too empty after the storm of emotions I've weathered these past few months. From my window, I can see the first hint of dawn breaking over the cityscape. The same sun will rise over my parents' house, now mortgaged to the hilt because of my sister and her husband's gambling addiction. I hit delete. For the first time in my life, I choose myself over the tidal wave of guilt that has defined my relationship with my family. It shouldn't be this hard to do the right thing. But when you've spent 32 years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the ATM with legs, the guilt doesn't disappear overnight. I think back to that Christmas dinner 3 months ago, the moment everything shattered, and wonder how we got here. Flashback. The beginning, 2 years ago, when the email announcing my promotion arrived, I practically danced around my office. Senior accountant at Wilson and Bryce was not just a title, it was validation. The salary bump from $75,000 to $120,000 meant I could finally breathe, pay my mortgage, live comfortably, and help my parents. Michelle, honey, you don't have to do this, Mom said when I first told her about setting up the monthly transfers. Mom, I want to, I replied, already pulling out my phone to set up the automatic payment of $1,500 in my banking app. I'm making good money now, and I want to help. Dad stood there, his eyes glistening with what I thought was gratitude. We raised a good one, Sarah, he said to Mom, putting his arm around her shoulders. I didn't see the expectation taking root in that moment. How could I? I was too busy feeling like I'd finally become the daughter they deserved. Growing up in our small town, I'd watched them sacrifice everything for our education, Dad taking double shifts at the insurance company, Mom grading papers late into the night after teaching all day. They'd made me who I was. This was the least I could do. Those first few months were heartwarming. Every time the money hit their account, they'd call to thank me. Mom would go on about how lucky they were to have such a thoughtful daughter, and Dad would crack jokes about having a sugar daughter instead of a sugar daddy. But you know how they say no good deed goes unpunished? I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Flashback. The chef, Michelle, sweetie, Mom called one Tuesday afternoon while I was buried in tax reports. Our coffee maker just broke down. You wouldn't believe the noise it made. We were wondering if you could help us get a new one. Of course, I said. It was just a coffee maker, right? But then came the iron. And after that, the washing machine, the lawn mower, the patio furniture. Each request bigger than the last, each one accompanied by increasingly elaborate stories about why they needed it right now. The thank you calls had stopped entirely. My generosity had transformed from gift to expectation. I remember staring at my bank statement one night, calculating how much I'd spent on them in just 6 months. Nearly $15,000, not counting the monthly transfers. That was more than most people their age received from Social Security in a year. I still remember the day I finally spoke up. I had just finished a particularly stressful week at work, and Mom called about wanting a new smart TV. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, I need you to understand something. I'm not printing money in my basement. I'm earning it. And while I love helping you guys, I think we need to slow down with the purchases. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I see, Mom finally said, her voice ice cold. Well, I wouldn't want to burden you with our needs. The line went dead before I could respond. Growing up, Mom had always been like this, a former elementary school teacher who ran our home with the same exacting standards she applied to her classroom. Dad, the perpetual peacekeeper, had always deferred to her stronger personality. As the youngest of 5 brothers, he'd spent his life taking the path of least resistance. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced with my family before. Weeks passed without a single call or message. The traditional Sunday dinners suddenly stopped, and my invitations went unanswered. Flashback. The sister. You won't believe this, Amy said during one of our phone calls, barely containing her laughter. Mom and Dad are acting like you've committed some terrible crime. They keep going on about how you abandoned them just because you wouldn't buy them a TV. Amy, at 27, had just gotten married to her longtime boyfriend, James, in a beautiful ceremony that I'd helped pay for. As different as we were, me, the serious accountant, her, the vibrant elementary school teacher, we'd always been close. Are you serious? I couldn't help but laugh too. A TV? You'd think I'd refuse to donate them a kidney or something. I know, right? But you know how they can be. Remember when I didn't call them for 3 days during my honeymoon? Mom acted like I'd moved to Mars. What I didn't know then was that Amy was hiding her own secrets. Behind her perfect marriage and job was a woman desperately trying to cover for a husband whose gambling addiction was spiraling out of control. Later, I learned that James' charming exterior masked a man whose wealthy but emotionally distant parents had taught him to solve problems by throwing money at them, money he didn't have. Flashback. The reconciliation. As Thanksgiving approached, I decided enough was enough. Armed with homemade apple pie, Dad's favorite, and carefully chosen gifts, I showed up at their doorstep unannounced. The moment Mom opened the door, I saw the conflict in her eyes, the lingering hurt battling with the natural instinct to welcome her daughter home. Dad appeared behind her, and after a moment's hesitation, they let me in. Amy and James were already there, sitting in the living room, and the atmosphere was tense for about 5 minutes before the familiar warmth of family started seeping back in. Over turkey and stuffing, Dad cleared his throat and dropped what seemed like an exciting bomb. "We've been thinking," he said, looking around the table. "What if we all went to Europe early next year? Germany, specifically, after Christmas." Mom's eyes lit up. "Oh yes, we've been planning it with Amy and James. Michelle, you should come too. It would be wonderful to have the whole family together." I sat there, fork midway to my mouth, considering the idea. A family trip to Europe, despite our recent discord, the thought was appealing. After a couple of minutes of mental calendar checking, I nodded. "You know what? That sounds great. I could use a vacation." What I didn't see was the knowing glance that passed between them, the subtle nod from Amy to Mom. I was so eager to belong again, to feel that familial warmth, that I missed all the warning signs. Flashback. The Christmas disaster. December arrived with a blanket of snow and the promise of holiday cheer. I spent weekends shopping for Christmas presents, determined to make this year special. For Mom, I bought an expensive cashmere sweater she'd been eyeing. Dad got the latest model of his favorite smartwatch. For Amy and James, I picked out a high-end coffee machine for their new house. When Christmas Eve arrived, I took a taxi to my parents' house, my arms loaded with carefully wrapped packages. The house looked festive, with twinkling lights outlining the windows and a wreath on the door. "Merry Christmas." Mom greeted me with a hug that felt almost like old times. The gift exchange started well enough. My presents were met with excitement and appreciation, though I couldn't help but notice their gifts to me seemed hastily chosen: a generic scarf and a gift card to a store I rarely visited. After a few glasses of wine with dinner, the atmosphere shifted. Mom kept exchanging meaningful glances with Dad, while Amy and James seemed unusually interested in their plates. "So, Michelle," Mom finally said, her voice carrying that sweet tone she usually reserved for asking favors, "we've been discussing the Europe trip. We found this amazing package deal for all five of us." I nodded, waiting for more information about the itinerary. What came next hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Since you're doing so well at work," Mom continued, her voice still syrupy sweet, "we thought it would make sense for you to cover the trip expenses for everyone." The wine glass froze halfway to my lips. "I'm sorry, what?" "Well, honey," Dad jumped in, "you make good money now, much more than Amy and James, and your mother and I are retired. Are you seriously asking me to pay for a European vacation for 5 people?" I set my glass down too forcefully, red wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "Not asking, dear," Mom corrected. "We've already decided this is how it should be. You can afford it." I looked at Amy, expecting her to back me up, to point out how absurd this was. Instead, she gave me a small shrug. "We did discuss this," she said. "It makes the most sense. Michelle, you're the one with the big salary." A memory flashed through my mind. 10-year-old Amy crying because I'd gotten the lead in the school play while she was cast as a tree. Mom comforting her, saying, "Michelle just got lucky this time. Next time will be your turn." It had always been like that, Amy, the favored one. Me, the one expected to understand, to give in, to be mature. "This is insane," I said, pushing my hair back from my face. "I'm happy to pay for my own trip, but I'm not bankrolling a European vacation for the whole family. Do you have any idea how much that would cost?" "Don't be selfish, Michelle," Mom snapped, her sweet tone evaporating. "After everything we've done for you. Selfish?" I laughed in disbelief. "I've been sending you $1,500 every month for 2 years. I helped pay for Amy's wedding. I bought you every appliance you've asked for. How does that make me selfish?" The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger, or wine, probably both. "If you won't help your family have this experience together, then you can leave," she said, pointing at the door. "We don't need selfish people at our Christmas celebration." I looked at Dad, but he just nodded in agreement. "Your mother's right. If you won't contribute to this family properly, maybe it's better if you go." Amy and James sat there, silent supporters of this madness. The betrayal stung worse than the harsh words. The taxi ride home that Christmas night was a blur of tears and anger. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made up my mind. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and canceled the monthly transfers to mom's account. Then I sent her a simple message. Monthly transfers canceled. Merry Christmas. Her response came almost immediately. This just proves what we already knew. You're selfish and greedy. Don't bother contacting us anymore. Flashback. The liberation. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I opened my laptop and started searching for vacation packages, not to Germany, but to Hawaii. Within hours, I had booked a 2-week stay at a beautiful beachfront resort for February. If I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on a vacation, I muttered to myself, it's going to be on my own terms. The weeks that followed were eerily quiet. No calls from mom or dad. No text from Amy. I threw myself into work and planning my solo trip. I avoided social media, knowing I'd probably see updates about their European adventure. February arrived, and one day curiosity got the better of me. I checked Amy's Instagram. There they were, photos of them all in Germany, posing in front of famous landmarks, eating at beer gardens. They looked happy, and I felt a complicated mix of hurt and relief that I wasn't there. While they were posting pictures from Munich and Berlin, I was boarding a plane to Honolulu. The moment I stepped onto the Hawaiian beach, felt the warm sand between my toes, and breathed in the salty air, I knew I'd made the right choice. You seem like you're carrying a weight off your shoulders, said Lisa, a woman I'd met at the resort's yoga class. Whatever you left behind, it was the right choice. She had no idea how right she was. Flashback, the revelation. Life has a funny way of testing your resolve just when you think you've finally found your peace. I had been back from Hawaii for about a month when my phone rang one Wednesday evening. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to answer. We hadn't spoken since that disastrous Christmas dinner, but curiosity made me pick up. Hello. I tried to keep my voice neutral. Michelle, Mom's voice sounded different, strained, desperate. We need you to come over, please. Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, she repeated, and I heard something I'd never heard in my mother's voice before. Fear. We. We need to talk to you in person. It's important. I should have said no. Instead, I heard myself saying, I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed their house looked different. The usually well-maintained garden was overgrown, and Dad's prized car was missing from its usual spot. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She looked older somehow, worn down. Dad sat in his armchair in the living room, staring at nothing in particular. What's going on? I asked, remaining standing. Where's your car? Dad finally looked at me, his face haggard. We had to sell it. Sell it? Why? Mom burst into tears. It's Amy and James. When we were in Germany, they went to a casino. They took my credit card. We thought they were just going sightseeing, but they went to the casino and spent almost $50,000 in 2 days. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. $50,000? How was that even possible? Mom whispered, credit card limit plus cash advances. We didn't even know until we got back and the bank statement came. But that's fraud, I said. You can dispute the charges. No, we can't, Dad said heavily. We had given Amy permission to use the card for emergencies. And there's more. The next half hour was like watching a horror movie unfold. My parents took turns explaining how they discovered that James had a gambling addiction, something Amy had known about but kept secret from the family for years. Worse, he had apparently introduced Amy to gambling, and she had developed her own addiction. She seemed so happy, Mom said, twisting a tissue in her hands. All those years with James. We thought they were perfect together. We had no idea. James lost his job, Dad added. His company found out about his gambling. They fired him immediately. Now they're both struggling. I sat there trying to process it all. My sister, practical, sensible Amy, was a gambling addict. The same sister who had sided with our parents in demanding I pay for their European vacation was now drowning in debt. Why are you telling me all this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mom leaned forward, her eyes pleading. Michelle, honey, we need help. The bank wants their money. We're retired. We don't have that kind of. No. The word came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't soften it. Absolutely not. But we're your parents. Mom's voice rose. You have to help us. Have to? Like I had to pay for everyone's European vacation, the same vacation where Amy and James stole $50,000 from you? We were just joking about the vacation, Mom said quickly. We didn't mean those things we said at Christmas. You know we love you. Love me? You kicked me out of Christmas dinner because I wouldn't bankroll your vacation. You called me selfish and greedy. You cut off all contact with me. And now you want me to bail you out? Your sister needs help, Dad said quietly. She's family. Where was this family loyalty when you were all ganging up on me at Christmas? Where was it when Amy sat there silently while you kicked me out? Why is it only family when you need something from me? Present day, the resolution. The memory of that night still stings as I watch the sun rise from my apartment window. The weeks that followed were a storm of missed calls, desperate voicemails, and emotional manipulation attempts. Amy tried creating new numbers to contact me after I blocked her. Mom enlisted relatives to plead on their behalf. Dad even showed up at my workplace one day. Then one evening, I received an unexpected visit from James' sister, Melissa, a psychiatric nurse with a direct manner. She confirmed what I suspected. James' gambling wasn't new, and his family had enabled him for years, just as mine was trying to do now. I want you to know you're right, she said, sitting on my couch, about not helping them. James has been struggling with gambling since college. Our parents bailed him out countless times, and it never helped. It just enabled him to keep going. So last night, I researched gambling addiction support groups and treatment centers. I compiled all the information into an email and sent it to my parents, Amy and James. I included contact information for financial advisors who specialize in debt management and bankruptcy law. And now, as I watch Mom's angry response disappear from my screen, I feel a strange mix of sadness and peace. This isn't the ending I would have chosen for my family. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop protecting people from the consequences of their actions. A year from now, I'll hear that my parents have downsized to a smaller house and taken part-time jobs. Amy and James will file for bankruptcy, lose their house, and finally agree to attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings. And me? I'll continue building my life, brick by careful brick, on the solid foundation of knowing that I can love my family without being responsible for them. That I am more than an ATM with legs. That the money I once sent to my parents now goes into my own retirement account and a charity that helps families affected by gambling addiction. Because sometimes the best way to help others is to make sure you're standing on solid ground yourself.